I learned the term bucket holiday from our dog trainer just the other day. Never heard that term before. And she was talking about our dog, who is super reactive. He's a standard size schnauzer, 2.5 years old, and he can get just overwhelmed by just about anything. I'm sure he's a highly sensitive dog. So she suggested or talked about in passing the idea of a bucket holiday where you give a break to the stimulation that this dog is having. And it just made me think about how we humans need bucket holidays, and maybe it's been talked about with humans as well. I don't know because I'm new to this, but I just love the analogy. The basic idea is that we all have different sizes of buckets, and some are big, some are small, some can hold a lot of water, some can just hold a little bit of water, and that's just our nature. We can't really change that too much. It's who we are, and we kind of have to work within the limits of our bucket size. If the bucket gets full, of course, it overflows, and the experience is that feeling overwhelmed and just not knowing, not being really in your best form. There's another element, which is every bucket has different drainage holes in it, and they have different sizes. So some buckets have big holes and they drain quickly. Some buckets have very small holes, they drain very slowly. And this also seems to be part of just who we are. And it affects how fast we can overcome or get over the overwhelm when it happens. And of course, the other factor is that life gives us different amounts of water in different situations. So sometimes the water is just pouring into our bucket. Sometimes it's just sprinkling into our bucket. And that also makes a big difference into whether we get overwhelmed or not. So it's just simply a balance between these different factors that allows us to know whether we're going to be overwhelmed or not overwhelmed. Highly sensitive people have another factor as well, and that is, if you think of the water as the incoming stimuli, then the HSPs tend to multiply that water, if you will, because we're aware of more details in everything. And so one drop of water is almost like 10 drops of water for an HSP because there's so much information contained in that one drop of water. So if water's pouring in, then think of like 10 times that amount pouring in. And I'm just making up the number 10 times. It's not scientific, but it's a lot more. So I love this analogy because it helps to explain why HSPs experience overwhelm more than non-HSPs. Because everyone has a limit to their bucket size, and if you put enough water in there, it's going to overflow. But if you have a smaller bucket, or if you have a smaller drainage hole there, or if you're multiplying the experience of water coming in, any of those factors can give rise to overwhelm much faster. Whereas somebody with a big, large bucket and maybe large drainage holes and is not multiplying the water, they're just going to experience like no overwhelm because they've got such a buffer there. So that's the way I tend to think of being a highly sensitive person. I don't have a buffer. And that means that I have to pay attention to what is coming in and how much I'm able to process. And I have to pace myself because of the just physical limits of the system. So let's look at how to use this analogy to find some places where you actually have some control over your experience, over control over your experience of overwhelm, for example, your experience of stress. First of all, I don't think we can control the size of our bucket. Seems like we're born that way. You may have a small one, and that's just the way it is. It's sort of like being skinny. I'm a skinny person, and I don't have a buffer, even on a physical level, that some people have. And so I have to be very careful what I eat. I can overwhelm my system very easily. Same with other things that you get exposed to. So if your bucket size is small, then okay, how do I live within the constraints of that? The second area is the size of the drainage holes. I don't know if we have too much control over that either, but there's probably some control. When I say drainage holes, it's like your ability to process things. So water comes in, how fast can you process it before it goes out and you don't have to think about it anymore? If you're an HSP, you probably process things thoroughly, slowly, and it may take a while. But there are some factors in there that you probably can control. And that are these holes in the bottom of your bucket plugged up by stress? Because if they are, it's like gunk in the bottom of the bucket. Doesn't matter how big the holes are, if they're plugged, the water is going to overflow off of the top. So if you can reduce the stress somehow, if you can process the stress, keep that clean down there, then the chances of being able to process your stress, process your experiences is going to increase quite a bit. So there's our natural ability to process things, and then there's our stressed ability to process things. And the stressed ability can be much reduced from the unstressed version of it. Also, it's good to keep in mind that if you gain more skills in being able to do things, it's almost like there's an ability to process things that you didn't have before. So I'm almost thinking of gaining skills as an ability to even open up new holes in the bucket so that what used to be overwhelming is now not overwhelming. And of course, there's also, you can ask for help too, like, hey, can you take some of this and out of my bucket and put it in your bucket? And maybe we can get the job done together. So there are different ways of kind of working within the limitations of whatever size drainage holes you happen to have, your ability to process things. And then the other area is you can control where you put your bucket and how long you keep it there. So if there's a waterfall and you bring your bucket over to the waterfall, you're going to be overwhelmed instantly. But you could just move it to the side of the waterfall and just get a little bit of the water coming in, and it would be much less overwhelming. Or you can go to other places where there's less of a strong input of water. And I know for me, there's just areas where I don't really thrive. I can get overwhelmed too quickly. And I've kind of learned that those aren't really my strong places, and I don't really go there unless I have to. And that's just intelligence. Why put your bucket in a place where it's going to get flooded in a very short amount of time? So yes, we have some certain nature built into us, certain size bucket, certain amount of size of the holes in the bucket, and that may be fixed to a certain degree, but we can control some of those things. We can control how open those holes remain. We may be able to add new holes, and we may be able to control where we put our bucket so that it doesn't get overwhelmed. So going back to the idea of a bucket holiday, I actually just took one last week. I wasn't calling it a bucket holiday. I wasn't thinking of that, but that's what it was. Number one bucket holiday for me is a staycation. And if you've never heard of that, that just means staying at home and having a week off without going anywhere, without doing anything, just relaxing. And I love this. I try to do this several times a year. It doesn't cost anything. It's easy. And I just get on the couch, read, do whatever I want to, listen to music. I went to the dog park and we played with the dog. I just did not my normal things. And it gives the brain a rest. It gives the body a rest. I slept more. I did more meditation. Like I meditated in the mornings, like a long time. And I could just feel my energy coming back. It's like the bucket was draining and the overwhelm was just going down, 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 down. I think one thing that we tend to think about with overwhelm is that it's a short-term thing. Oh, I just got overwhelmed. I need to rest right now, or I need to back off right now. But there's short-term overwhelm, and there's also having a almost full bucket, which, yeah, I reduced the overwhelm. So, but I'm still at a very high level of fullness, and it's not going to take much to make me overwhelm again. So having a bucket holiday means like giving yourself the time to let the water go down and 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 down, like a whole week, for example. And when you do that, you're going to start to have a buffer again when you come back into your activity. So other examples of bucket holidays you could take, a meditation retreat is a great one because meditation is rest, deep rest, and it's often away from where you normally are, maybe unplugged. You may be in a more nature scene, and it can be a wonderful way to recharge. Yoga retreat, same idea. Some kind of nature excursion also can be similar, like a camping trip, depending on how you manage that. Now, if you're staying up really late every night in the camping trip, you may end up getting tired. If you're not taking care of yourself while you're camping, then that may not be a bucket holiday, but there's a way to do it. Maybe there's just a little cabin somewhere that you can rent for a weekend or a week and just be there and just relax. It's easy, and you can decompress in that way. Same thing like a beach holiday. I know my great-grandfather was prescribed by his doctor to take a beach holiday for the whole summer. He said, close down your work for the whole summer, go and just do something, completely relaxed. So he did. He did every summer. He took the whole family to the beach. He went fishing every day, and it became like a big kind of tradition in our family. And still my cousins do that almost every year. Take a whole week, just sit on the beach, like literally do nothing, swim, talk with each other, cook together, hang out, play board games, children play with each other. And it's a bucket holiday. Same thing, lake. I prefer a lake. It's a little cooler than the hot sun on a beach for me, but same idea. Ideally, if you can do these things without Wi-Fi or cell service or even TV, then you're giving even less stimulus to your brain, and you're going to give yourself a chance to really lower the level of the water in your bucket. And another cool idea that I heard from one of my friends who I play pickleball with is that he and his wife they'll just rent a room in the next city or next town or some small place around where we live for the weekend, and then go there like it's a real holiday. They'll explore the town, they'll go out to dinner, they'll just relax. And it's like getting out of your normal environment. I thought that was the neatest idea. Just a holiday that's not super expensive, doesn't involve air travel, and can be just as relaxing and just as regenerating as going somewhere further away. So these are just a few ideas. I'm sure you can come up with even more, but the idea of a bucket holiday is one that I really like. Don't just take the edge off the stress. Give yourself more time to really decrease the whole quantity of water in your bucket and give it time to get that whatever buffer you can back in place so that when you're dealing with the ups and downs of life, you can handle them more easily.